The Victorian mansion at 1847 Maple Grove has stood proudly for over 150 years. Its elaborate gingerbread trim and soaring turrets a testament to an era when craftsmanship meant everything. I first fell in love with the house when I was just a graduate student in architectural preservation, never dreaming I would one day call it home, or that I would have to fight my own mother-in-law to keep it. The real estate listing that popped up on my phone in my Tokyo hotel room felt like a physical blow. Stunning Victorian manor, priced to sell quickly. The photos showcased every loving detail I'd restored over the past 3 years. The hand-carved mahogany staircase I'd spent 6 months rehabilitating. The original stained glass windows I'd had specially restored by artisans in Prague. The period-accurate wallpaper I'd sourced from a small factory in England that still used 19th-century printing techniques. My mother-in-law Margaret Henderson's name as the listing agent made my jaw clench. She'd been trying to get her hands on this property since before I married her son, seeing it as her family's birthright rather than the historical treasure I knew it to be. "You don't deserve this house." Her words from our last argument still rang in my ears. "A property like this should stay in the right family's hands. You're just a preservation enthusiast playing at restoration." If she only knew. I reached for my phone, my fingers hovering over the number that would change everything. Margaret was about to learn that her daughter-in-law wasn't just a restoration expert. I was now the head commissioner of the State Real Estate Licensing Board. I'm Olivia Parker, and my journey to this moment began long before I met my husband James or his socially ambitious mother. Growing up as the daughter of 2 passionate history teachers, I spent my childhood weekends exploring historic homes and learning about architectural preservation. My parents may not have been wealthy, but they gave me something far more valuable, an appreciation for history and the importance of protecting our architectural heritage. When they died in a car accident during my sophomore year of college, I channeled my grief into my studies, graduating summa cum laude with a double major in architecture and historic preservation. My thesis on adaptive reuse of Victorian-era buildings won national recognition and led to my first job with the State Historic Preservation Office. That's where I learned that saving historic buildings isn't just about understanding architecture. It's about navigating complex regulations, building community support, and sometimes fighting powerful developers who see these treasures as nothing more than profit opportunities. I worked my way up through the ranks, earning certifications in real estate law and historic preservation, building a reputation as someone who could balance preservation with practical use. By 30, I had my own restoration consulting firm and had saved dozens of historic properties from demolition or inappropriate development. My work caught the attention of the State Real Estate Licensing Board, where I began serving as an advisor on historic property issues. What I didn't know then was that this expertise would one day be crucial in protecting my own home from my mother-in-law's schemes. Our connection was immediate and deep. James shared my passion for historical architecture and preservation, and we spent hours discussing the importance of maintaining our city's architectural heritage. What I didn't know then was that his mother, Margaret, had very different ideas about what constituted proper use of historic properties. Margaret Henderson was old money, the kind that believed certain addresses should belong to certain families. She'd made her fortune in real estate development, primarily by buying historic properties and turning them into luxury condos. When James introduced me as his girlfriend, her first question wasn't about my background or interests, it was about my family's social standing. "Parker?" she'd said, her perfectly penciled eyebrows arching. "I don't recall any Parkers in our circle. What did you say your parents do?" "They were schoolteachers," I replied, watching her face fall. "They passed away when I was in college." That was strike one. Strike two came when she learned I worked in historic home restoration rather than proper real estate development. But the final strike, the one that would fuel years of resentment, came when I bought the Henderson family's ancestral home right out from under her. The Victorian mansion on Maple Grove had been in James's father's family for generations. When his father died, the property passed to his aunt, who decided to sell it rather than maintain such a large house. Margaret had assumed she'd be able to buy it, planning to subdivide the property into luxury townhouses. What she hadn't counted on was my expertise in historic preservation law and my connections in the architectural community. I'd been working for years to protect historically significant properties from exactly the kind of development she specialized in. When I learned about her plans for the house, I knew I had to act. The bidding war was fierce, but in the end, my restoration company's offer won out, partly because I included a detailed preservation plan that would maintain the house's historical integrity. Margaret was livid, but there was nothing she could do. The sale was legal, and the property was mine. James supported my decision completely. He'd grown up visiting that house, and the thought of it being carved up into condos horrified him. We decided to make it our home, and I spent 2 years carefully restoring it to its original glory while adding modern amenities that didn't compromise its historical character. We were married in the house's grand ballroom, surrounded by the restored mahogany paneling and original crystal chandeliers. Margaret attended, of course, but her wedding gift, a set of architectural plans for modernizing the house, made her feelings clear. For 3 years, she tried every trick she could think of to gain control of the property. She reported imaginary code violations to the city. She attempted to have the house's historical designation revoked. She even tried to convince James that the house was too big for us and that we should sell it to her and move into one of her luxury developments. Nothing worked. Each attempt only strengthened my resolve to protect the house and its history. What Margaret didn't know was that while she was plotting to get her hands on my property, I was building a reputation in the historic preservation and real estate communities. My restoration projects won awards. I served on preservation boards and real estate committees. I earned advanced certifications in both historic preservation and real estate law. And 3 months ago, I was appointed as head commissioner of the State Real Estate Licensing Board, a fact I hadn't yet shared with my mother-in-law. When this latest business trip to Tokyo came up, a 3-week consultation on preserving traditional Japanese architecture, Margaret apparently saw her opportunity. She must have thought that with me out of the country and James busy with a magazine deadline, she could quickly sell the house before anyone could stop her. What she didn't count on was the network of preservation enthusiasts and real estate professionals who kept an eye on historic property listings. Within hours of her posting the listing, I'd received multiple messages alerting me to the situation. Now, sitting in my hotel room halfway around the world, I picked up my phone and dialed a number I knew would change everything. State Real Estate Licensing Board, Commissioner Parker's office. My assistant answered. "Sarah, it's Olivia. I need you to pull up a listing for 1847 Maple Grove and check the authorization documentation." There was a pause as Sarah accessed the files. "Interesting," she said. "The listing agent is Margaret Henderson, but I'm not seeing any seller's authorization forms in the system. That's a serious violation." "Yes, it is," I agreed. "Please schedule an emergency board review for tomorrow morning. I'll attend virtually from Tokyo." Next, I called James. He answered on the first ring, his voice tight with anger. "Liv, I just saw what my mother did. I've already left 3 messages for her to call me back. Has she responded?" "No, but she posted on social media about a exciting new property opportunity coming to market. She's already scheduling viewings for tomorrow." I smiled grimly. "Well, she's certainly going to have an interesting morning. Don't tell her about my position with the licensing board. Let her walk into this one on her own." The next morning, I logged into the emergency board meeting from my hotel room. The other commissioners were already online, reviewing the documentation Sarah had prepared. At exactly 9 a.m., Margaret swept into the boardroom in person, probably expecting to defend her actions to a group of faceless bureaucrats. The look on her face when she saw me on the main screen was priceless. "Good morning, Mrs. Henderson," I said pleasantly. "I'm Commissioner Parker, head of the State Real Estate Licensing Board. We've called this emergency meeting to discuss some serious concerns about your recent listing of 1847 Maple Grove." Margaret's composed facade cracked slightly. "Olivia, what is this?" "That's Commissioner Parker in this context, Mrs. Henderson. Now, can you please explain why you listed a property for sale without the owner's authorization?" Well, James mentioned they were thinking of selling, and I simply wanted to test the market." "Did you have written authorization from the property owners?" "Not exactly, but as James's mother." "So you fraudulently listed a property without owner authorization, a direct violation of state real estate law and the board's ethical guidelines?" Margaret's face had gone from pink to white. "Now see here, this is a family matter." "No, Mrs. Henderson, this is a legal matter. You used your real estate license to commit fraud. That's grounds for immediate suspension, possibly permanent revocation. The other commissioners nodded in agreement. Margaret looked around the room desperately, probably hoping to find a sympathetic face among her peers. Instead, she found people who had watched her bend rules and exploit properties for years. I move to immediately suspend Margaret Henderson's real estate license pending a full investigation, one commissioner stated. Seconded. Another quickly added. This is ridiculous. Margaret burst out. That house belongs in the Henderson family. She doesn't deserve it. She's not even from the right background. Mrs. Henderson, I interrupted, my voice steel sharp. You're just making this worse. The board takes discrimination based on social background very seriously. The vote was unanimous. Margaret's license was suspended immediately, and all her current listings were frozen pending review. As a final blow, the board initiated an investigation into her past dealings, particularly those involving historic properties. This meeting is adjourned, I announced. Mrs. Henderson, you'll be receiving formal notification of these actions in writing. Please have your attorney contact the board's legal department with any questions. As the other commissioners filed out, Margaret remained standing in the middle of the room, staring at my image on the screen. You planned this, she accused. You've been working against me all along. No, Margaret, I replied calmly. I've been working to protect historic properties and uphold real estate laws. You're the one who chose to break those laws. The fact that I'm in a position to stop you is just karmic justice. The aftermath was swift and extensive. The investigation into Margaret's past dealings revealed multiple instances of questionable practices, particularly regarding historic properties. Several of her previous developments were found to have violated preservation codes, resulting in hefty fines. James fully supported the board's actions, though it created some awkward family dynamics. She brought this on herself, he said when Margaret tried to guilt him into intervening on her behalf. Maybe this will finally teach her that she can't just take whatever she wants. Margaret's social standing, which she'd valued so highly, took a major hit. The same society circles she'd used to look down on me now whispered about her ethical violations and suspended license. Several of her luxury development projects lost investors when the investigation became public. As for our house, I continued my restoration work, focusing on preserving not just the building but its history. We opened it for historical society tours, sharing its beauty with people who truly appreciated it. The irony wasn't lost on anyone when the house won a preservation award, with the ceremony held in the same ballroom where Margaret had once sneered at my obsession with old things. 1 year later, Margaret requested a meeting. She'd completed the board's required ethics courses and wanted to apply for reinstatement of her license. As head commissioner, I had to recuse myself from the vote, but I did agree to meet with her privately first. She looked older, more subdued. The designer suits and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by a simpler, more natural appearance. I've done a lot of thinking, she began, about properties, about history, about family. And, I prompted when she paused. And I was wrong, not just about the listing, about everything. I saw properties as commodities to be exploited. You saw them as pieces of history to be preserved. I was so focused on status and appearances that I couldn't see the real value in what you were doing. It wasn't quite an apology, but from Margaret, it was revolutionary. The board will consider your reinstatement application on its merits, I said carefully, but personally, I appreciate your reflection on this. Margaret nodded. The house. You've done amazing things with it, things I never would have considered. Would you be willing to show me some of the restoration work sometime? It was a small olive branch, but I took it. I'd like that. Today, 2 years later, the situation has evolved in ways none of us could have predicted. Margaret's license was eventually reinstated, but with restrictions on historic properties. To everyone's surprise, she's turned her focus to renovating and preserving historic commercial buildings, sometimes even consulting with me on preservation techniques. She's still Margaret. She still makes comments about my common background sometimes, and she hasn't completely given up her social climbing, but she's learned to respect boundaries, both professional and personal. And when our first child was born last year, she was genuinely touched that we chose to raise our family in the house she'd once tried to take away. The Victorian on Maple Grove stands as a testament to the power of preservation, not just of buildings, but of principles. Its restored walls now echo with new family memories, while its historical character remains protected for future generations. And if anyone asks about the modern security system and detailed property documentation we maintain, well, some lessons you only need to learn once.